All right, happening right now, a big storm you can see on your screen. The East Coast bracing for Hurricane Lee, expected to hit tomorrow as a Category 1 hurricane, which doesn't sound too scary, but tropical storm conditions are expected as early as this afternoon in parts of New England, and it can bring a fierce punch. President Biden has already approved an emergency declaration for Maine as Hurricane Lee moves up the East Coast and could actually gain some strength, which is a greater concern. Sam Hurley is the director of the Maine Emergency Medical Services, and he is with me this morning to talk about the preparations. Appreciate your time. I know you're very busy. Describe for me the conditions now and what you're expecting in the hours ahead.
Yeah, so we're anticipating the wind to increase as well as the rain to start falling, particularly in the most eastern parts of the state of Maine. The coastline, we anticipate that there will be erosion along our coastline. As you can see, the waves there battering our coastlines, particularly some of our coastal communities that are attached only by bridge. When you think about Bar Harbor in northern Maine, one of the main roads in and out is a coastal road where it has a huge risk of being affected by the storm surge, which is not going to be super significant with the storm, but the swells and the waves that would batter those roads and the areas around those roads. So we are worried about those increased risks as the storm comes into our neck of the woods.
And the last thing you want on some of those barrier islands or pieces of land would be people getting trapped. So are there evacuation orders happening? Do you anticipate you'll have to enact some?
So evacuations in the state of Maine are a local determination. I personally am not aware of any current standing evacuation orders. However, that would likely be best for the Emergency Management Agency to answer. However, that is more of a local determination based on the conditions and the expectations that they have as far as the impacts from the storm. What we are trying to do is make sure that local communities are informed as far as the flash flooding threat, the wind threat, the surf threats, and the radius of the storm, which the radius of the storm is 250 miles wide so far, and that will impact some of the interior parts of the state of Maine with rain and wind, which we are concerned about as Maine has recently experienced some significant rainfall, which makes trees, which still have all their foliage on, prime for being uprooted and falling, even in the interior parts of the state.
Right. I had a meteorologist, a good friend of mine, once describe it as, trees are like sails when they are covered in leaves, and when wind hits them, I mean, they rip out of the ground and they become airborne. It's a very scary situation, and power is also an issue. Talk about some of the preparations happening in these communities, not just by city and local officials, but by citizens themselves. Are you seeing people board up their homes? What other precautions are they taking?
People are going out and getting water and supplies to make sure that they are ready, and emergency management officials are communicating to the public the importance of being prepared to hunker down for that 72-hour window, which is what we have been informed by our power and utilities, that there may be power outages that last 72 to 96 hours, depending on the location. The rurality of Maine makes it that some places it's hard to get to, and if you have multiple downed trees, it is challenging to get to those areas. We're also doing our best to inform residents about the risks of wind and the potential for delayed response with EMS. I serve as the state EMS director, Emergency Medical Services. There may be delays in our responses based on the wind. When you think of ambulances, they're giant rectangles going down the road. But when you have sustained winds over 40 miles per hour, it can make it dangerous to operate those vehicles. And so there may be delays in response, and making sure people who have durable medical equipment, so home ventilators and dialysis machines, et cetera, are preparing for the storm and making contingency plans. That's something we are actively trying to communicate to members of the public.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.